Hey guys, and welcome to the Grumpy Sound Guy Show. I'm your host, Mr. J.R. Everhart from CLP Audio and Staging, the Grumpy Sound Guy himself. Today, we're going to talk about stage volume, ways we can keep stage volume under control, the hazards of stage volume, and how it affects front of house, and all the fun things that you guys love to hear when it comes to stage volume. You do not want to miss a second of today's show. Hey guys, JR here. I wanted to talk to you for a quick second. If I could just have your attention for like 90 seconds, please. Can you please consider subscribing to the channel? Like 47% of you guys watching right now have not even hit the subscription button and the notification bell so that you can follow this content. And many of you are coming back week after week. Hey, look, it's okay. I do the same thing sometimes. Sometimes I am so into what a channel is posting that I forget, hey, I need to support them with my subscription. So I will hit that subscription thing. Also, if you really super dig what I'm doing here with the Grumpy Sound Guy content, please think about becoming a paid member and becoming one of the Grumpy Sound Guy Insiders. We have a wonderful group of industry professionals over there now that are answering questions and helping people get from A to B, giving recommendations on gear. I myself am in all those conversations. When I know you're an insider, I give you preferential treatment, all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely worth the price of a cup of coffee fee that it is every month to just get in there and become part of a group of guys that respectfully know how to communicate with the guys that really just need to ask some elementary level questions, I always say it's a safe place to ask dumb questions. Look, I don't know everything. Sometimes I'll get on there and post something like, hey, what do you guys know about this? What do you guys know about that? It's so different from the forums where you're ridiculed and made fun of many times. I do not tolerate that with the Grumpy Insiders. These guys are really just there trying to connect, trying to have community, and to try to do the right thing and helping everybody get to where they need to be in the business. I love you guys. Stick around for the rest of the content. Hello, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. So we have talked about this subject many times in the past, but you guys keep circling back around to it and asking me to continue to talk about it. So let's have another conversation about it. I was just hanging out with a production buddy of mine probably about 3 weeks ago, and we were talking with some stagehands who were kind of new to the industry and that sort of thing. And they had asked him, because they're used to kind of hearing me preach all the time, they were asking him what the greatest tool he can put in his toolbox as a sound engineer is. And the first thing out of his mouth was working with a band that understands the dynamics of stage volume. They all kind of looked at me, I looked at them, and it was like, told you. Nothing is a greater enemy of a great front of house mix more than stage volume. Okay, if your band is too loud on stage, it's going to be too loud out front. If the sound guy, and I always describe it like having to work with bands that are too loud on stage is kind of like cleaning Blue Johns for a living. No matter how good a day you have, you're going to get some poop on you, so it's that sort of scenario where, and it frustrates a lot of guys, especially house guys, when they know they have a band coming in that is habitually loud. That's going to drive front of house volume up, and then that's going to make people complain that it's too loud, because it is too loud. And it's really being dictated by, the drummer, guitar player, or bass player, or whoever is the loudest guy on stage. I used to know a singer who used to say that a loud drummer is the absolute enemy of any lead singer, because it's hard to, do what you do as a lead singer when you got 120 dB of drums pounding behind you and cymbals and everything else. Well, I mean, that translates to everything that we do, and this has led us to conversations about silent stages, where everyone is direct, everyone's in in-ear monitors. Some of you older cats think that that's absolute blasphemy and that's not music. you're welcome to have that opinion, but if you want to get paid and get called back, you're going to have to manage stage volume better. You just are. I had a guy comment on one of my older short videos today over on Facebook, and he said, man, he goes, I'm a solo acoustic act, and he said, I carry my own PA, and even I was becoming too loud. And he goes, I had to make a decision. Am I going to deflate my ego and give the client what they're asking for, what they want? Or am I going to, stand on my ego and make everybody around me feel stupid because you're trying to treat them like they don't know what they're talking about? And live music's just loud. Well, this dude's just an acoustic guitar and a vocal. Don't need to be that loud, dude. It just doesn't, So he said, I decided to turn down, keep my job, keep my gig. And we really, in the club scene, that's really where it's at. Now, if you want to talk about, street festivals and outdoor festivals and stuff like that, or outdoor gigs in the park, those outdoor, venues are much more tolerant of loud stage volume. Save it for those gigs. You know what I mean? Like, let it all hang out when you're outside, but when you're playing, especially a small club or even medium-sized clubs, I've seen even big clubs where this was a problem, especially if you had a loud drummer. And if the drummer's loud, it usually drives everybody else's volume up. It just does, So, you got a front of house engineer out there who is trying to make sense of all this. And his number one goal is to keep vocals above everything. Because if it's not, then everybody's running to him, hey, I can't hear the vocals. I can't this, I can't that, and it's, dude, it's not rocket science here. You know what I'm saying? Like, is your ego such a problem that you can't hear that you're loud on stage? And then these guys who want to wear earplugs with a wedge mix and an amplifier, I just want to throat punch those dudes, because it's like, look, man, if your band is so loud you got to wear earplugs, well, then that right there should tell you that there's a problem, Dorothy. Like, take your earplugs out and tell the drummer to play softer, or get a drummer that will. It's a crazy idea, but I mean, the reality of it is if you're the loudest band in your scene, man, you're going to get a reputation for that. I've been in those bands. I've been the loud drummer that was a problem. So I'm speaking from personal experience. It frustrated me so bad at one point where I gave up playing music for a while because of it, because I didn't want to play any other way. This is just, I wasn't trying to play loud. This is just the way it comes out. So I made some adjustments and bought some different sticks and, leaned into like silent sticks and hot rod, type sticks and that sort of thing. And that has made a huge difference in my life. And now I can enjoy playing again, in a club environment. You know what I'm saying? So in-ear monitors go a long way in this conversation. I still can't, in 2025, almost 26, I still can't fathom how so many guys are so resistant to in-ear monitors. Look, I know it's a little bit of a learning curve. I know that things sound a little differently especially if you're isolated in your ears and you're sealed correctly. Put a room mic up. That'll get you back into, things, back into the room. You can buy vented, earbuds. They don't all have to be perfectly sealed. I prefer them to be perfectly sealed because I get a lot more low-end response, but I'm a drummer. So, I mean, that's kind of how that goes. But, I mixed a guy not long ago who had this honking, whole band's on ears except for the singer, and there's this honking wedge in front of him, and it's loud, dude. It's as loud as front of house. I mean, it's loud. And I'm like, man, do you just not trust your ears? I mean, why do you feel the need to have that thing? And he's just like, man, I just can't seem to get away from it, And of course, I'll do whatever the client wants, I mean, I have no ego whatsoever, about any of this stuff. If you want to be loud, obnoxious, and run everybody out of the room, hey, that's fine. I'm getting paid, that's your problem, not mine. That's a beautiful thing about being in the production business. They'll try to blame it on me, but when they come to me complaining, I'll turn front of house off and show them just how loud you are from the stage. And then guess what? Now it's on your plate. I mean, it kind of is what it is, man, And you're either going to comply or you're going to slowly fade into the sunset of live music and lose more and more venues. We were recently talking about how venues in the shorts, we've been recently talking about how venues have been struggling financially. A lot of venues have closed and that sort of thing. In my area, we have lost a lot of bar level venues, live music venues, but we've gained a whole bunch of brewery level venues or winery level venues. And these are usually big, steel building, warehouse, type places, and they're booking full live music schedules. The problem is it's a big, full steel building garage kind of environment that you're trying to play in, and the band is just loud, in those environments. These breweries and wineries are never going to spend the money to tune the room and to put up sound absorption and to try to tame the room in any way, shape, or form. They're going to just expect the band to turn down because in their minds, they think everything has a volume knob on it. They think an acoustic drum set has a volume knob on it. It really doesn't. Real drums don't have volume knobs. That's one of the t-shirts that I sell in my merch store. So stage volume is really come to a place where it can cost you business and it can keep you out of a lot of venues. It just can. Are you going to comply and keep working, or are you going to, stick to your guns and slowly lose venue after venue after venue because that's just the way it's going? The other thing is everyone's wearing, smartwatches now, and most of these smartwatches are set up in a manner to where if it's too loud, it starts telling you that it's too loud and you need to either leave the environment or turn the music down. Well, obviously, if you're just attending a local brewery to hear a band and have a few beers with your friends, you can't turn the band down because you don't have control over that. So you're left with no choice but to leave. And the way that those smartwatches present that, they present it in a manner to where it is hazardous to your health. So then you get people who come up to you and say, hey, you are threatening my health, my hearing with this. This is, you can't do this, I agree with them. I don't want to threaten your hearing. I don't want to set your Apple Watch off, or something like that. I don't want to create a loud environment. I'm not wearing earplugs. I don't want to abuse my ears that way. I already have hearing loss to some degree. I don't want to lose any more. I'm trying to hold on to everything I got, So it always comes back to the same common denominator, and that's stage volume. Are you going to do something with it, or are you not? That's the repetitive question throughout this whole video. Sticking to your guns and trying to ride it out. Well, man, it's rock and roll. It's supposed to be loud. Tell that to Eddie Van Halen or tell that to, blah, blah, blah. Well, dude, you ain't Eddie Van Halen. You ain't Joe Bonamassa. You are not in any position to be dictating how it's going to go, whether the venue likes it or not. And if you think you are, you're going to get a rude awakening real quick because that's not the way this business works. You're working for them. They're paying you. Yeah, sure, you have the option to pack up and go home. I know bands that's done that. I know one local guitar player who's kind of famous for that. He went into one venue. It was a great opportunity for him to be a regular in that venue. Their demographic of people would have fit his genre of music perfectly. And, they complained about it being too loud because he's way too loud. Third song, he packs up and leaves. Yeah. So what kind of impression do you think that leaves on the venue? And then what kind of grapevine gossip, because we all know that doesn't happen very often, do you think that's going to spread to other venues that he's hopeful and trying to book? Like, oh, well, we heard that, if we complain about the volume, you're just going to pack up and leave, and then we're out a night of entertainment. Well, there's only two options there. There's either tolerate the volume or there's never book the guy. And I hate to tell you, but people ran from that guy like the plague. That's the world we live in. Look, I ain't saying I agree with all of it. I agree with most of it because things are too damn loud. I grew up, through the 80s and the 90s, and I'm here to tell you those concerts were too loud too, They sounded a lot better. because the bands were better. Analog gear naturally sounds better, but they're just too damn loud, you know. But no one complained because no one was really waving that flag of, you know, trying to protect their hearing or any of that kind of stuff. I didn't hear any of that sort of conversation until probably the late 90s or something, you know. So, you know, how can we lower stage volume? Well, the drummer can explore some of the things that I've explored. Silent sticks go a long way. That really backs off the drums. Excuse me. And makes things a lot more tolerable. Hot rods do the same thing. You say that to a lot of drummers, they turn their nose up, like, I don't want to do that, blah, blah, blah. I'll just try to play softer and that sort of thing. And they'll play softer for, you know, an intro and a chorus of a song, and then they're back to whatever volume they usually play. You can put up drum shields. That helps with cymbal bleed into the vocal mics, but that's not really a problem solver. It really, because you're just ricocheting it off the back wall at that point. Play softer, you know, or go to electronic drums where you have a volume knob. I'm not a fan of electronic drums, so I have chosen to use silent sticks and hot rods and those kind of things to lower my volume. And it's worked, and it's working. You know, I will deal with the fact that they don't feel the same as regular drumsticks, and my drums don't sound the same, you know, when I hit it with a silent stick or a hot rod as it does when I hit it with a drumstick. So there's that. But I'd rather tolerate that than to play on rubber pads, you know, through a processor. I just don't want to do it. But that might be the answer for you. I know a bunch of guys that do that. They're perfectly happy with an electronic kit. The other thing is, you know, guitar players are habitually known for being too loud. Get your amp up on a stand and tilt it toward your head. I know a lot of bands that point their amps toward the back wall of the stage, because usually the back wall has a curtain or some kind of sound soak, you know, on it most of the time. And yeah, that helps diffuse some of that. It eliminates the power alley of guitar amp volume that the first or second table may have to deal with when the guitar amp is plowed just right directly toward them. I went out and seen some friends of mine play one time, and I was in that guitar amp power alley and ended up leaving like 4 songs into the night because I just couldn't take it. I just couldn't. And I said something, the guitar player was a friend of mine. And I said something to the guitar player, like, dude, you are murdering us out here with your amp. And he's just like, dude, it's rock and roll, man. That's what it is. And then turned around and walked away. And I was like, okay, bye. And everyone else is thinking the same thing, dude. That's the thing, you know. No one's going to stand there in this world, in today's modern world, and tolerate that. You know, they're just going to, you know, say nothing, turn around and leave. You know, if you really, you know, tick them off, they might, you know, give you the finger or something, or, you know, point to their ears and say, hey, it's too loud and we're leaving because of that. Which most bands are going to, you know, kind of wave at them because they got a big arrogant attitude about, you know, their volume. They know they're loud and they don't care. Tough stuff, dude. Bass players. It ain't very often I have a bass player that's too loud, but, you know, I can think of a couple guys that are habitually too loud from the stage with their bass amp, and they don't want to turn down. There's a couple tricks that you can use with bass amps. Make sure your bass amp is pressed against the back wall of the stage, because a lot of times what happens is if you're 6 or 8 feet away from the back wall, bass is omnidirectional, which means it produces behind it as much as it does in front of it. Whenever that back wall, if it doesn't have sound soak or some kind of absorptive material there, doesn't absorb that energy, it reflects. Now it's out of phase, and it will cancel out your volume right in front of the amp. That's why the bass player can't hear himself play in front of the amp, and the people in the front 2 tables are getting blown off the dance floor or off the venue there, away from the venue. So there's one little trick you can use. Again, point the thing to your head, or get far enough in front of it where you can actually hear it reproduce. Low end takes, 15, 20 feet to reproduce sometimes, so be aware of that, I think if anybody should go direct, it should be the bass guitar, because a lot of these small rooms were not, even medium-sized, large indoor rooms, were not designed for live music. So they have a lot of resonant low frequencies present in the room before you ever plug your bass in. And then when you come in there pounding it with, stage volume, then that just enforces those resonant frequencies and can be a problem for the sound guy to have to deal with. Now, to all those people who are going to watch this video, because I'm wrapping up, guys, all these people who are going to watch this video and sit here and say, well, the sound guy just needs to do his damn job, and, this turn down, tell the band to turn down, or this, that, and the other. And, like I get a lot of musicians that attack me saying, you just don't want to have to, actually mix the band. You want the band perfect as soon as you plug it in. Well, I'll say this. The more perfect you can get, the closer to perfect you can get, the better your mix is going to sound, because the less I have to manipulate it. Because I'm in the business of sound reinforcement, not sound recreation. So I'm not here to turn your horrible tone into amazing tone. I'm here to make what you do louder and sprinkle some pixie dust on top of it and put the icing on the cake. If you really want to do your sound guy a solid, set him up in a manner to where all your patches are level, your stage volume is under control, and the band itself has things correct. The guitar player has a little bit of a boost and a solo patch, so he doesn't have to chase that around so much, and he can focus on vocals, because that's what's going to really drive your band home. There's a lot of bands that are great musically, but weak vocally. So you need to give your sound guy the absolute most tools and resources you can to help him make those vocals the best they can, because he can manipulate those vocals really more than he can anything else in the mix, in the room. Everything else is kind of like it's got to be there at the source, and it has to be there at the source for vocalists too, don't get me wrong. But with vocal effects and compression and things like that and EQing, you can really take a good singer and make them sound great. But the band has to be out of the way of that. And you don't want your sound guy chasing your keyboard player's patches around every song. You want him focused on trying to get vocals right, getting those backing vocals blended correctly and all that kind of stuff. That's really what's going to give you what you want out front, and it's going to make your audience walk away talking about how good the band was. Because from a non-musician, layman standpoint, from the audience standpoint, they're looking at the guy standing in the front, the guy singing. And if they can't hear him correctly or her, and they don't sound good, that's the first thing they're going to notice. And then they come running to the sound guy like, hey, man, I can't hear the vocals. And I'm usually like, yeah, me either. I got it screaming. I got the volume turned almost all the way up. Like, the band is too loud on stage. I can't get the vocal over it. And then you end up with these mixes that are super, 110 dB or something, and people are not going to tolerate that anymore. So that's kind of, my spiel on that. A lot of you guys have heard me talk about that before in the past. This is really for a lot of the new cats that are new to the channel and are just starting to get involved in the Grumpy Sound Guy ecosystem here. But if you've made it this far, you really should consider becoming a Grumpy Insider. We have a really cool group of sound engineers and production people over there. There's a lot of opportunities in that group because there are people working in the industry over there. If you're looking for work, that's not a bad place to start, is get into that insiders group and get over there and talk to those cats. Obviously, you're going to get member-only content from me. This week, the member video is going to be about me telling my story, my journey in the music business. And I'm going to kind of open up and get very personal about some of my own struggles and anxiety and, all the things that I have been through to get where I am in the music business. That is going to be a member-only video, So get over there, man. It's about, $5 a month, something like that, about the price of a cup of coffee at Starbucks per month. You can be a Grumpy Insider, and then you get to, just be part of the cool kids club. You get to rub shoulders with other guys that are working in the industry. Maybe they're working at a level you wish you were working at. And that's a great place to learn how to get there. It's a great place to ask questions about that. You're not just getting me, you're not just getting my wisdom, but you're also getting the wisdom of those guys as well. Look, I'll put a link in the description so you can join. I love you. I'll see you next week.